Well, hello, this is Walter Bosley at the Walter Bosley channel, and I'm going to talk about filmmaking, particularly giving you an update on my current film project titled The Kaleidoscope Grimoire. It was 10 years ago that I produced and screened my first silent picture, and we screened it at the Fox Theater in Redlands. And when I think about the cut that I screened, I cringe because, I want to say about 5 or 6 years, I think it was about 5 years ago, I realized that embedded within the story that I had filmed, there was the actual story that apparently I was trying to tell. And I talk about that here on the channel in an interesting video, episode. It's an audio episode upload in which I discuss Hell's Bells with Laura London, a Jungian scholar. Now, she had watched Hell's Bells before we had the discussion, and she watched we talked about it a little bit. She watched the film, and then we set up a time where we could discuss it in depth from generally a Jungian perspective. And it's a really interesting discussion. I won't repeat it here when you can go listen to it there. But if you go to the video catalog here and scroll down, you will find those videos. Just look for the black and white still image of the ladies in black, kind of spooky looking. It's the same still image I use for both videos. Those of you who have been following this channel are familiar with the fact that I'm working on a film project. For those who are new, cinema was really my first creative love. I was into films and wanting to make films before I really committed to writing. I grew up going to the movies, primarily the drive-ins on the weekends. My dad loved horror films, so I grew up, my sisters and I grew up, Mom and Dad would pile us into the car, we'd have our homemade popcorn, bring our own, sodas, and we'd off to the drive-in we would go, and we'd see a double feature, usually some B and B-minus movie. This was in the late 60s, early to mid 70s, and I had the pleasure, and I do call it that, of having seen such classics of that era as Gruesome Twosome and The Velvet Vampire. It's interesting how The Velvet Vampire I see is streaming on TCM, I think it is. It's nice that that's considered the classic that it is. If you love B films, particularly B horror films, then we're on the same page. I tend toward supernatural. I'm not into the slasher picks. Sorry, I know there's a huge audience for that, and that's really something that emerged big in the mid to late 70s and really in the 80s, expanded. But I'm more into the supernatural things. Not that there wasn't a decent share of violence in the pictures I grew up watching at the drive-in. But interesting note, I had never made the connection before, but Celeste Yarnell, who's the star of Velvet Vampire, also appeared in the original Star Trek series. So look that up, check that out. You might find that interesting. But anyway, back to the topic at the moment. For those who are new here, I like to make micro-budget films, and I think that's being generous. I spent a total of $702 in entirety on Hell's Bells. If you go back and watch it, I think it looks it. You can see every penny of that $702 on screen. Actually, no, you can't, because a fair amount of that went into the gas tank, just driving to the locations that you see in the film. So think about it. Between the gasoline to go to the locations, which included Yucca Valley, going over to Riverside to Mount Rubidoux, going up into the Cajon Pass, and let me think where else. Oh, we went out to Baker and we filmed in the lava tube. That was the most distant location that we filmed at. But I did all of that. Came up with the costumes, the props, most of which I came up with or made myself, of course, in both instances. And, had the makeup done and fed my cast and crew what little I fed them. Anyway, the whole production was $702. So it's not all on the... Well, I consider if I spent gas to put in the car to get to a location, we're at that location, see? And the payoff is, there it is. It is up on the screen. So actually, I take that back. Every penny I spent on that movie is up on the screen. Now, with this current picture I'm working on, I've already spent almost 3 times that much, and I'm maybe a quarter of the way finished with the film. But it is a more challenging film that I'm doing now. There's more to it than there was with Hell's Bells. If I can say that without, lessening Hell's Bells in any way. This one is more complicated. I just finished the first phase of principal photography production, right? The first phase of production in principal photography. And what was interesting is I did something that I didn't do with Hell's Bells. I want to point something out. I almost did something similar with Hell's Bells. We ended up making the trek out to Baker, California, which is, I think, popularly known as, I guess it's the halfway point between here, the San Bernardino Valley, and Las Vegas. And then you go south, actually, out of Baker to get to the lava tube. And you got to know where to turn, where it's at. And there's, at least when I went there, all the times I went there, there's no signs. So we went out there to film that. But originally, I was going to build a phony cavern set. I have an enclosed back patio on this house, and I was essentially going to use the roof and the framing of the enclosure as the anchor for the material that would have been used to form a fake tunnel, and I would have used some type of really thin, I guess, light metal or something that I could have bent and dented and, make it look like a rock surface, right? That was the point. And I was going to do that. And I thought, it's going to be cheaper and a lot easier just to spend the gas to drive out there and shoot in an existing cave. It's a lava tube, technically, but it looks like a cave, cavern, or whatever. And it looked great. It looks great in the film, and I'm glad we did that. But I was going to do that. Well, on this picture that I'm working on now, I seem to have satisfied the desire to build, some type of set. And what I actually did was build multiple sets, only inside the house. Now, the layout of this house, we have the kitchen, and we have a counter with, some couple of bar stools, so folks can sit there and have meals or whatever. And then off of that is it's kind of one big area. The kitchen and the counter divides, where then we have what was supposed to be, by floor plan design, a dining room area. We have used it instead as a TV room for years, like a little relaxing family TV area that's right there off the kitchen, right? So what I did was I designed a structure, and I went and got the wood, and I built just the frame of a box, like a big cube. It was actually, 9 feet deep, 7 feet high. Each wall was 7 feet high. And I think the back wall was 8 feet in length, and the side walls were 9 feet in length. So it wasn't quite a cube. It wasn't a square. It was just kind of a short rectangle, I guess you'd call it. But you get the idea. And of course, there was one open end that would not have a wall. Well, I used this to hang the walls for multiple sets. Now, what I did in this first phase was shoot all the stuff I needed with the live actors. This picture, Kaleidoscope Grimoire, is going to be a combination of live actors and stop-motion animation. And so I built the first set I had to shoot, and the actor came over, and we spent the evening shooting her 2 scenes. She only has 2 scenes in the film. And we shot her 2 scenes on the set that is supposed to be like a big tent kind of. Yeah, it's a tent shelter, but it's got all this exotic stuff, furnishings and objects inside. It's the story is very much kind of on the fantasy level. So there's multiple kinds of locations or sets, if you will. I as you can tell, I'm stumbling around because I don't want to give away anything in the film. This one in particular, I want the audience to just, the viewer to experience it fresh and know little to nothing about it when they watch it the first time. So anyway, she came over, we put her in makeup and costume, and, the set's pretty cool. It has a little fire pot type of lanterns, and the set pieces I actually built out of wood and cardboard, paint, and they're of my own design. And of course there's little props and there's more to it, And then after we finished her scenes, and I was pleased with what we had, I took that all down and proceeded to put up the next set, which fortunately was, when you see the film, there's a couple of scenes. Well, this scene in particular almost has kind of a minimalist look to it when it comes to the live actor. So all I had to do was make sure the walls were dark, black, and I was mostly filming head and shoulders and close-ups of this particular actor. And actor or actress, it goes back and forth. I hear, the real industry people use both, so no, I'm not meaning to offend, but I'm not really losing sleep over it either. So anyway, the actress came over and we shot her scenes. And again, I did not have to take those walls down, because once again, the next scene, which is probably the most minimalist looking kind of set in the picture, required, this was fun because I built a large prop with moving parts, and we filmed the shots with that. And it had to be in an area where it's surrounded by darkness, and just so there was black walls. And then after we filmed that, the next actor came over, and we filmed those scenes again with the black walls. And I saved the most extensive build for last, meaning last in this phase, last using the stage box, as I call it. And this thing was up for months, by the way. I had commandeered this part of the house for, my gosh, must have been 5 months, I want to say. So when I built, I had to build more solid walls. The final scene we shot in the stage box had solid walls, so to speak. So I rather than build flats like you do in theater with wood frames and muslin, I guess that's muslin, cover and then paint those, I use cardboard. I mean, just use big sheets of cardboard, and it had to look almost like a cottage. So it has the walls, and it's got the kind of a wainscoting look. So the walls in a border trim that kind of divides the two sections, and of course hung the lighting. Now overhead, I had beams of wood that were loose, that were not connected, that I could suspend lights from and shift them any way I wanted, to position the lights wherever I wanted and needed them. And that one took a little while to build, and then for various reasons it took longer to get to that scene than I had planned, but we finally got to it. And there was a choice between a couple of other actors, and there were great reasons to want to use them, but there were reasons to not use them. No bad reflection on them, just it had to do with scheduling and timing and just this, that, and the other. So I ended up playing the role myself. Now, before you go going, oh God, and rolling your eyes, I mean, I've been involved in theater since I was a little kid. Yes, school theater, but local theater as well. Of course, I had started writing in the filmmaking about that time too. So I appear in Hell's Bells. Go watch it and see if you find me. Anyway, I played the role in this final live actor scene that we shot in the studio, the stage box, I call it. And we finally wrapped that up. Again, I looked at all the footage to make sure that I covered everything I needed to cover and that I'm happy with it. And then I gave myself the word to go ahead and finally deconstruct the box, the stage box frame, if you will. So I took down those walls and into the recycling garbage they went, and because they were cardboard. And then I broke down the wooden box frame that I had lived with and come to know for 5 months in our house, and everybody else had come to know it as well. And we were all glad when we got that room back. It's now our TV room again. And basically what it was is the area, the floor area between the wall shelving cabinet wall and then the walls where there were couches, where there are couches. That floor area was big enough to house these sets that I needed. So I didn't have to move any furniture out of there. I literally built this frame, this staging frame, in that space. It's like I built it and then just kind of slid it into place. And of course, the rest of the room was essentially invisible because of the walls of this thing for months. And anyway, I broke it down, and I'm repurposing the wood. You like that? That's how that's how you do things. You work smarter, not harder, and you don't spend twice the money that you need to. The wood that I used for the frame is going to become the legs for my animation tables. I'm going to build those too, so I have enough wood for the legs. Now all I got to do is buy a couple of plywood sheets and cut them to my design, make my animation tables, and place them. Or I'll build them where they're going to be for the next, not quite a year, but longer than 5 months, that's for sure. And so they're stacked up in their neat pile waiting for me to begin. I'm taking a month off or so to, pay attention to some publishing business so I can get some stuff out there and get caught up on some other things. And, just kind of catch my breath and take a break after having finished the phase with the actors. And then, probably in October, I will start building the animation tables. And once, it'll end up being one big kind of V-shaped thing. My little animation stage, as it were. And once I get that built, and it'll be built in place where I'm going to be shooting the animated parts for the next several months. After that, then I will, once that table's built, then I will commence building that first set. And the way I'm doing this film is, as I said, it's a combination of stop motion and live actors. And the main character starts out as a live actor, by the way, but then is depicted as an animated figure, animated character through much of the film, and will be interacting with those live actors. So I will be essentially recreating the life-size set, tripping over myself, life-size sets that I just talked about building in the little stage box. I'll be creating in miniature the part of that set that the animated character will occupy. In other words, the part you don't see in the shots of the live actors, but it'll be matched to where, yes, it's clearly the animated character is in the tent structure with that character, is in that minimalist space with the other two characters, is in that cottage that I described to you. And it'll all match up, of course. And that will be in the doing. And so, I'm really looking forward to doing this next part of the film very much, because I'm just anxious to get to the miniatures and the animation. I enjoy working, on model kits and working on miniature things. And so, I've been working on bringing my skills up to a higher level on that. There's one particular scene where there's no live actors. It's just there are 3 characters, and they're all 3 animated. So that's going to be really cool. In fact, that's going to be one of the most fun scenes in the film for just the action that goes on, but the fact that it's going to be stop motion. And that will be the very likely it will be the last of the stop motion scenes that I shoot, because it's going to take the longest, being that all the characters in it are going to be animated. And because of the action that is written that I need them to do. So it's a little more extensive, quite a bit more extensive, a little more complicated, I should say, is the word I'm looking for, than the other scenes. See, the other scenes are mostly the animated figure is standing or seated before the live action figure, and they're in a conversation with them, interaction with them. So, it's a lot of nodding and reacting, or even though it's a silent picture, the mouth needs to move, to deliver the lines and such. And so that's much simpler than this one particular scene that I'm talking about, that has more action in it. And other than that, there are the transitions between the scenes that I'm looking forward to, because I'm going to do those in an interesting way, that I think will be quite visually interesting. I think the viewer will enjoy them as well as much, certainly, as the stop motion, and then the very last thing I'll end up doing is the scenes with the other live actor who's the lead character, but those are all on location, so I'm waiting till the very end. Everything else is done, and I'll do those. But again, let's go back to what I really got on here to talk about was the fact that I finished the first phase and how that went. In film, you know, particularly on the micro, and I'm on the micro budget level. Okay, I'm on the no. In fact, I started calling my little my label. And I'm doing air quotes, because believe me, I know I'm a micro budget nobody, but I release, so to speak, air quotes with that, my pictures under the label. That's an imprint of my publishing company being Lost Continent Library, which, by the way, celebrates its 20th anniversary coming up in October. Lost Amazon Motion Pictures is my, air quotes, film division, my label. But my little company, I call myself No Budget Pictures. I came up with that back in 2012 during Hell's Bells, and I'm very much, I've said on my live stream that I'm very much a believer in the auteur theory of filmmaking. I like that. I care about the directors and the director's influence and the director's vision. Now, with my movies, because they're such small projects, I do envision them. I write them. I make the production happen. So, for all practical purposes, I'm the producer. And yes, I direct them. I do the set design. I shoot them myself unless I'm in the scene, and then I have a competent associate shoot those shots for me under my guidance. I design the sets, I design the costumes, I will make the props and the set pieces. When you see certain furnishings or certain objects, the more exotic, dramatic objects on the set in this film, I made those myself. And that's what I do on my films. The first thing I do for costume stuff is I raid every closet in the house. Nobody's old clothes stash is safe, because I look for whatever I need among that first. If I need to dye it, it gets dyed. If it needs altered, it gets altered. And then after that, if I don't find on hand what I need, then I go to thrift stores, and I try to get it as cheaply as possible at a thrift store. So after I've raided closets and after I've gone to the thrift stores, if I still don't have a particular item, then I go to the discount shops like Burlington or TJ Maxx, that kind of thing. And you get the idea. I try to do it as cheaply as possible and as close to getting things free. I will also take stock of what props I have on hand. In Hell's Bells, there's the cavern scene, and it just so happens that we have an old vintage railroad lantern here that my mom's husband, who passed away years ago, he had worked for the railroad for a while, and he used that lantern. And it's just that classic, you've seen them, the classic kerosene lantern. And I checked for the historical authenticity, and the things existed, in the era that the film is supposed to take place. So I felt like, okay, it's authentic. And I do care about details like that. And so what I did was I took a battery-powered headlamp and put it inside the lantern, in a way where you couldn't see what it was, but you saw the illumination. And it worked because the film Hell's Bells is black and white, and, the way I, messed with it, filtered the image, so to speak, it just looks like, a lantern with a flame inside. I have no plans to use the lantern in this picture, but I had that on hand. I wonder, I was just thinking as I was thinking about the lantern, did I write a cavern scene because I had the prop that I wanted to use? Did the prop drive any of the writing? I'm not going to say no, I would never do that. But it's certainly not a regular go-to ideal thing to do, all the time. Sometimes it works. But whatever the case was, that film worked, and it works even better after the current cut that you can watch at YouTube is what I call the good cut, the right cut. It's the film that my subconscious was wanting to make. And I'm serious about that. You can hear me talk about that with Laura London in the other video. But anyway, yeah. So if I don't have something, like for instance, in one scene, we needed the opium pipe. Well, I don't have an opium pipe. So what I did was I did the research. Of course, I've seen pictures of them. I've seen them before. But I, refreshed my memory on them, looked at photographs, and I bought some dowel rods of the proper length and some other items. And I fashioned an opium pipe, a pretty convincing opium pipe, I think. Convincing enough for this picture. And that just gives you an example of, one of the things I did. And again, any props that I couldn't buy already ready to go. And the problem with that, anyway, is it might not be exactly what you want, and it might be an item that too many people will recognize as a product that's out there and available, right? It might be something that, 20 other people have used in a movie that year. So this is why I prefer to, fashion my own props most of the time, because it is something that's made for this particular film. So I do all that. I edit the thing and Hell's Bells and this one and all of them. So it really is an auteur thing for me. It really is a Walter Bosley film, as the credit says, because yes, I have other people appear in the films, and yeah, I have other people, help out with aspects of the film, but think about it. There's one person from beginning to end, okay, from vision to viewing, I say, through the writing, through the pre-production, through the casting, through everything. Yep, there's one person on my pictures that's there for all of it, making it happen. Okay, doing the things. That's me. So, that's the way it is on a Walter Bosley picture. Now, with this one that I'm doing, I told myself, yes, I'm using friends I know in some cases, and stuff, but regardless, and even no matter how little the amount is, I told myself I wanted to give them something. I wanted to pay them something. So I paid my actors. Paying my actors in this film. It's not much, but they're grateful. They're like, oh, this is cool. I get to, come over here for an evening and get in a costume, get made up, and have fun, doing a couple of scenes in a film. And gosh, he's throwing a little bit of pocket money my way. Depending upon the extent of the role and depending upon, what I'm asking them to do, different ones get, different levels of pay. Nobody's getting rich off of my movie, but you get the idea. I think it's a show of gratitude on my part and recognition that hey, they're helping me make this a reality, make this happen, and they're going to have a lot of fun seeing themselves when it's done. Now I also have a dedicated MUA, Liliana Budavong, who's my kid number 2, as I like to call her. Kid number 1, he's a filmmaker. He's directed a couple of indie films, and he's worked in the industry, as they call it, and such. Well, Liliana is my MUA. I pay her per face, as she describes it, and she does a hell of a job. We've already done one physical makeup effect, similar to what was done almost 100 years ago in movies. And that'll be fun when you see that, I think. Yeah, so I have a dedicated MUA, and we had fun. Each night we've shot so far. It took so long to do. These are relatively, like I said, these actors only had, 2 scenes. And it's not like they're long scenes. But there was a lot of time in between shooting each scene because of people's schedules, because of my own schedule. I had appointments that I had to deal with. I had a procedure done on one eye during this, so I had medical stuff going on and stuff. So it just takes a while to get these things done when you work the way I do. Mostly, I work alone, and I like that, except on filming day or whatever. And it really does feel like a phase has been completed, because I've got a little piece of this picture done, and it's still scary. I will say that anyone who's made a film, particularly when you're using other people's money, and that's what I'm doing on this. I have some very generous donors. This film is being produced, the financed, let's say, paid for through donations. And I'm telling you, these folks, a couple of guys in particular, have really gone beyond and are helping making this happen. It's amazing. Just how generous they are, because they're saying, here, take some money and do your thing. And I like working with donor producers because there's no illusion that there's any, and I know how this is going to sound to some people, but, again, I don't really care. Anyway, a donor producer, there's no illusions about having any creative input on the picture. Okay, I don't want somebody who's going to insist or even worse, passive aggressively attempt some type of creative influence or input. I don't want that. Okay. If I do want it, I will ask for it. I will ask an opinion. But I'm pretty confident with what I'm doing here and why I'm doing what I'm doing. Usually when I go to someone and say, hey, would you like to work on my movie? I could really use you or whatever. It's because they do something on a skill level, an expertise level that I can't, or I don't have that expertise or that skill. And, I do my best to make it worth their while to the extent that I can. But, the donor producer, I'm trying that really for the first time in earnest on this picture, the Kaleidoscope Grimoire. And, I've had several people, come forth and throw some funds my way so that I can make this happen. And I'm just eternally grateful to them for this. I really am. And I do tell them directly. So that's how I work. And so far, so good. Knocking on the wooden table over here. And I'm going to be taking the footage that I've shot so far. I was supposed to do it this past week, but I got distracted and just, I had some other things I had to do, business things. So I am going to this coming week, or the week we're in now, depending upon when you're listening to this, going to sit down and in front of we have a shared, Liliana and I have a shared editing program, and I'm going to sit down in front of that computer and just take, some test shots, little snippets from the footage I already shot, put together a little reel, and do all the things I want to do using the filters and visual stuff, lay a little music over it. And then I'll have me a little test reel that I can just sit there and stare at and watch over and over and over to see if I like it, to see, make notes on anything I want to alter, and to have something to show the donor producers for the money they've given so far, to say, hey, look, I'm actually doing this movie. I haven't run off to Fiji with your donations. To be honest, I could probably get to Fiji on the budget of this film. But anyway, there would be no money left over for fancy drinks and, a tropical paradise after that. But I really enjoy this. I enjoy making films. The best part about it is when you've got it all shot. I mean, it's shot, and you're starting to put together, and you've got a film. That's really exciting. I love the process. Don't get me wrong. I love the process of filmmaking. I love it. And honestly, before you finish shooting a film, you are getting ideas bouncing around in your head about the next one. But you kind of have to, you learn how to put those aside because you got to finish this one, the one you're working on. But hey, Hell's Bells, I'm convinced my donors to, contribute to this one. And this one, along with Hell's Bells, will convince some donors to, contribute to the next one, I think. particularly when they see, wow, Hell's Bells looks pretty good for $702, not all of which, well, yeah, we already went through that, didn't we? Yeah, it's all on the screen. And wow, look at the more challenging things he did, and look at the level that he rose to with Kaleidoscope Grimoire with just X more number of dollars. Yeah, yeah, and this new one sounds exciting, whatever that new idea will be. And we're impressed with the progress he made from Hell's Bells to Kaleidoscope Grimoire. We're impressed with those films for what they are. Yeah, let's help him make that next one. Now, I'll tell you, I am not going to wait 10 years to do another one. What was I doing in those 10 years since Hell's Bells? Well, it wasn't that I didn't want to make another film. In fact, I did make another one, which won't likely see the light of day as is. It will probably end up getting chopped up and used in the background like a film within a film kind of thing, because it really, well, I say it didn't turn out good enough, but Liliana and her boyfriend, they're going to take the picture. I'm going to let them recut it. I'm going to let them put their own original music on it. And I don't know, maybe I will release it. It's titled Sloppy Dead Seconds. It is a supernatural horror flick. And it stars Liliana, by the way. We shot that in 2013, the year after I made Hell's Bells. And there was actually 2 previous versions of Kaleidoscope Grimoire, and I'm making the 3rd version that was written. The first one I realized early on was a little too ambitious. The second one, I had just started pre-production. I had done character makeup and costume test shots of my lead actress, but the material that the second version of Kaleidoscope Grimoire was based on was material that I unexpectedly sold the rights to a movie and TV producer. So I couldn't make that version, so I'm making the 3rd written version. But during those 10 years, yeah, I attempted to, there was another one, Chthonic, which I actually did start to make. I shot stuff for a trailer for that. I ended up shooting Sloppy Dead Seconds, the whole thing. But I was spending those years mostly writing. If you look at my writing catalog, I had written my Disneyland book in 2006 and 7, released it, I think, in early 2008. And then the first Empire of the Wheel book, which was only my second nonfiction book, Disneyland book was nonfiction. I didn't release that book until 2011. Okay, so when I shot Hell's Bells, I only had 2 of my nonfiction books to my name. Done. Okay, and while I was continuing to do the research and investigation for, what I would go on to write, in 2012, I was also making this film. Basically doing that on the days that I wasn't shooting the film, right? And after 2012, when Hell's Bells was all done, we screened it at the Fox and such, I, of course, went into writing Empire of the Wheel 2, and on and so forth, all the other books I wrote. So that by the time I got to actually shooting this film, as you see, I had done the Empire of the Wheel trilogy. I had, I should say doing the 2nd and 3rd books of the Empire of the Wheel trilogy. This is all after Hell's Bells. I had done all 4 Secret Missions books. I had written Origin, I had written Shimmering Light, I had written Confessions of a Spooky Mind, and I had written 5 pulp novels and additionally a time travel novel. So you see, I have written most of the huge most of my personal books so far, let me add so far to that, in these last 10 years. Okay, so I was really focusing on the writing, and also in these last 10 years, what has happened was I was asked to be on a couple of TV shows. I was on a Travel Channel show. I was on Ancient Aliens. I was on Sean Stone's Buzzsaw. I was on George Nuri's Beyond Belief. Sold the rights to Empire. Just a lot of things, going on, and moving my brand, my name, my stuff forward higher. But time was going on, and I want to do another picture, and so here I am. So I don't beat myself up too much that there's 10 years between Hell's Bells and this one, also a black and white period silent picture. I don't beat myself up too hard because I look at the shelf of books that I have written and the things I have accomplished, moving forward as a writer. That's all been very productive. So I like to think of it as I earned the right to this luxury, because making a film is a luxury, believe me. So that's where I'm at. Again, finish that first phase with the live actors. I go into the stop motion animation phase next. Also, I'm doing the music in this one as well. I know there's people out there listening to this going, oh my God, this thing's going to be a piece of unmitigated garbage, because, they don't, nobody's heard any music I've done, and, nobody, oh, he's in his movie, nobody, so what that he did school and community theater. A lot of lousy actors do that. I get it. But, I'm pretty confident that when you see the film, you'll go, oh, okay, cool. So what I'll do is, like I said, take a break, take care of some publishing business, collect some more donations to be able to finance the next, phase of the picture. And put something together I'll be proud of, and I think you guys will find really interesting and entertaining, at least. And, that's it. I love film. I love making films. I love doing these micro-budget things, these small, intimate, personal films, because I can tell the stories I want to tell, and I can, just entertain an audience. There are some pearl-clutching moments in Kaleidoscope Grimoire, and I am looking so forward to doing that to an audience. I want to see how many people I make go gasp with horror, what they see on the screen. I want to say this without telling you what's in the picture. When you do see it, if you do see it, if you do choose to watch it, everything you see is symbolic. And that's what I'll say. Just keep in mind that everything, it's a metaphor. It's greatly a metaphor. The story, I make no secret of it, the story that I wrote, script that I wrote, is inspired by the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Great Liberation. I think that's the title of it. I'm sorry, it's late. I don't have it sitting in front of me, but it is based on mystical and esoteric texts, those particular ones. It's drawn from. Let me say it's drawn from. And those of you really familiar with those texts will, I think, recognize immediately what's going on in the picture as you watch it. And it'll still be very fun for you. So, anyway, I think I've gone on almost an hour here, about an hour. And yes, I could go on rambling for hours and hours about filmmaking, but I think I'll stop this one right here. I'm going to continue these little uploaded episodes where I talk about my films and eventually films in general. And these are for me and for those of you out there who are interested in, micro-budget filmmaking, independent films, and whether making your own or, being a fan of and watching those of others. Um, if you're not into that, you probably haven't listened this far on this. But if you have, I thank you very much, and I look forward to sharing these thoughts and comments with you again. The film that I'm working on, the Kaleidoscope Grimoire, and it is a silent picture, kind of an homage to specifically the mid to late 1920s. So it's going to have that look, black and white, and I'm doing a lot of, I think, some fun visual period, things that are of that era that they would do in movies and movies before that era. Little touches here and there. I think you guys will appreciate it, particularly you classic film lovers out there. So anyway, that's all I'm gonna say for right now. I'm gonna sign off, and I will be doing my live stream, of course. This is Saturday night. I will be doing my live stream on Sunday. It might be at a later time because I have a family member visiting, and we're all going to lunch during the day. So by the time you hear this, you'll have read that message, and it won't make any difference. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this little talk, and I hope you listen in the next time, the next one that I do. Thank you.